All right, for this last lesson for this first quarter, we're going to go over the last tutorial, and then I'm going to give you a review for the test for this unit. So, okay, so there's two different tutorials, right? Lesson activities. Nope, there's just one. Oh, sorry, it's just that one of the readings or the readings don't necessarily pertain to the lesson activity, but they're really important for the test. So that's when we're going to go over all that. Okay, so we have a little bit of stuff about like grammar here. So I'm excited. I found videos for two of the questions, and then part of it is totally just like you're going to have to answer the questions on your own. But yeah, I've got a couple of videos, then I'll explain one because it's just easier to do that than to try and find a video. We'll go over a modest proposal and then a poem, and then test prep. Okay, so part A. Read this quote that comes from a popular television and movie franchise: "To boldly go where no one has gone before." This Star Trek quote is a famous example of a split infinitive. Use a reference guide or a website dedicated to writing and grammar to learn more about infinitives and split infinitives. Find out whether it's grammatically acceptable to use a split infinitive in a sentence and the circumstances that may require using a split infinitive. Based on your research, answer the questions below. So what is an infinitive and what is a split infinitive? What is the rule about splitting infinitives? How would you rewrite the quote above based on this rule? And then what is your opinion about the rule of split infinitives? When do you usually split infinitives? Do you think it's okay to have grammar rules that might conflict with how ordinary people speak? So question 3, you need to answer on your own. However, I found a video that basically is meant for questions 1 and 2. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera and pop that video on for a minute here.
I'm going to talk to you about how and why you should avoid split infinitives in your writing. And I can't talk about split infinitives without thinking about the Star Trek TV show. You may know the famous phrase, "to boldly go where no man has gone before."
See what I mean? It's like this video was meant for these questions.
It's a great TV show, but a grammatically incorrect phrase, and I'll show you why. So a split infinitive happens when we have an infinitive form of a verb, like to go, broken up by an adverb, like boldly. So you can see in this case, to boldly go creates a split infinitive. The way to fix this is to simply rearrange the words so that your infinitive stays together.
Okay, one thing that I don't know if I didn't watch like through the whole thing because it got where I needed it to get. Um, One thing that I want to point out here is what exactly an infinitive is. So an infinitive, I like to think of them as there's an infinite number of them. So any verb that you put the word to in front of, that's you're making that the infinitive form of the verb. Um, so you have like think of a verb and you put to in front of it and then it is an infinitive. So to go, to walk, to dance, to sing, to pet, anything like that, because those are all verbs, by adding the to in front of them, it's an infinitive. So splitting that infinitive is when you're putting another word in between, in this case, an adverb. The adverb boldly, it's an adverb because it is adding to the verb and explaining how you will go. So, okay. Sorry, just trying to figure out how to get this going.
To go. And boldly, your adverb, comes after the infinitive. I like to think of infinitives as being connected by super glue. You want to keep them stuck together so that nothing comes between them. And the adverb can typically go after or even sometimes before. Let's fix another sentence with a split infinitive. This time we have, if you are going to quickly eat, be careful. In this sentence,
okay, hold on. So as you can see here, I'm just trying to end this video now because we got the point about what goes with the question. But again, just for another example. So here the adverb is quickly, which is splitting the infinitive to eat, or infinitive phrase, if you will. Welcome to Kat to the video. And so again, the point is that the grammatical rule that was established during this period of neoclassicism was that you would not split infinitives. Realistically, people do it all the time. It doesn't really matter. The only person that's probably going to care in your life is me. So what is an infinitive? An infinitive is a form of a verb with to in front of it. And a split infinitive is when you insert another word, usually an adverb, in between to and the verb. What is the rule about splitting infinitives? The rule is that you don't. The adverb needs to either go before or after the infinitive, and then you can answer 3 on your own, like I said. Okay. Part B. Read the following famous quote by Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of Great Britain in the mid-20th century. Ending a sentence with a preposition is something up with which I will not put. Use a reference guide or website to learn about using preposition at the end of the sentence. Find out when it's acceptable and when it's not acceptable. Answer the questions. Okay, so question 1, what is the rule? And then questions 2 and 3 are your own, because it's asking for your opinion and your impression. So what is your impression of Churchill's sentence? I think it's hard to say. Does it seem correct or incorrect? Does it sound like a good sentence or not? What might you change to improve it and why? Please answer all parts of that question in complete sentences. And then what is your opinion of the rule? Do you follow the rule or do you ignore it? Under what circumstances would you vary from your usual habit of following it or ignoring it? All right, so what is the rule about ending a sentence with a preposition?
We speak student!
Ending sentences in prepositions a la Schwa. All right, Penelope's never had this kind of problem before. She contracted mono, better known as the kissing disease, from the boys she's been after. Now she's stuck at home watching soap operas and wondering who Johnny could have caught mono from. Penelope is busy puzzling over the identity of the other woman in Johnny's life, but should she be worrying more about her prepositional usage? Well, here's the grammar rule on ending sentences in prepositions. It's totally cool to do so, as long as that preposition is necessary and indispensable.
Before I continue here, just so you know, a preposition is a word that helps some like nouns, or just it helps other words relate to each other. So examples like we had here, like after, before, on, those are all examples of prepositions. And so you'll get some examples with the examples that are given.
All right, what does necessary and indispensable look like? Well, Anna's family is unpacking from a recent move. Her mom asks, which box is the TV remote in? That in is necessary and indispensable. Without it, the question doesn't make much sense. Jimmy plans to ride in the Mongol Rally with his 3 best friends. The guys are psyched. Their parents have only one question. Which third world countries do you plan on driving through? Well, that through is once again necessary and indispensable. And having SEAL Team 6 on speed dial for this trip will probably be necessary and indispensable too. Billy and Tracy have been together since the 7th grade, but now they're going to different colleges on opposite sides of the country. Tracy tells Billy, cheat on me this semester and I swear I'll fly to Pittsburgh just to cut something off, if you get what we mean. That off is necessary and indispensable, as are some other things. And something tells us that Billy's eyes aren't going to wander at all. Oh, come on. Now that we've looked at sentences that correctly end in prepositions, Let's look at some examples of end-of-sentence preposition use gone horribly, terribly wrong. Katie's throwing herself a birthday party and she's invited all her friends. 7 o'clock on Saturday night rolls around and she's all alone in her living room. Where's everyone at? She asks. Well, here the at is unnecessary, dispensable, grammatically incorrect, and just plain annoying. Tom sees a carload of hot girls at a red light. He pulls up, rolls down his window, and asks the driver, "Where are you driving to?" Well, they probably mean to get as far away from that bad grammar as possible, Tom, because that to is both unnecessary and dispensable. The grammar rule here is simple. It's okay to end a sentence with a preposition, so long as that preposition is necessary and indispensable.
All right, that's really the point, right? Okay, so necessary and indispensable. That's the rule. There you go. Haha, it answered the question. So now you know about infinitives and prepositions. Okay, so the last one here. Okay, so you have an assignment to proofread your school website, which includes image captions and posts made by fellow students. Many of the captions say something like, "This is a picture of my best friend and I at a basketball game." You know that me should be used after the preposition of, because you would say a picture of me, but you are not sure if you should change such captions. Again, do some research. I'm just going to tell you. Okay, so the rule regarding the use of me or I in a sentence. There's a couple of different ways that I can tell you this. So the first thing is that me is the objective form to use. So in this case, where we have, this is a picture of my best friend, and then we know and me would be the correct version. This is a picture. The picture is the subject of the sentence. What is the picture of? Me, the object. So that's just like your subject, object, verb, object, that whole situation there. I is the subjective version, or when you are the subject. So I am in this picture. I am the subject. This is a picture, which is then the object of me. That's the fun, technical, I'm a nerd English teacher version. But when thinking about how to do it, the rule is if you take the I or the me out of the sentence, does it still make sense? So this is a picture of my best friend. If it makes sense on its own, then you're using me. If it doesn't make sense on its own, then you would use I. Okay, so this is a picture of my best friend and me, because without and me, the sentence still makes sense. There you go. So does the rule indicate what form to use in the caption above? Yes, it does. It is not only the objective positioning in the sentence, but also, again, if you take the rest of the sentence up, this is a picture of my best friend at the basketball game, it still makes sense. And then what's your opinion about the rule? Your opinion. I can't tell you what your opinion is. All right. So I put up the test prep study guide for you in Google Classroom so you can make your own copy of it. I'm only going to go over some of this stuff right here for this particular tutorial set. So I'm going to go over A Modest Proposal by Jonathan Swift, and then this poem that I'm not really excited. I'm just going to kind of like talk about kind of what the basic idea is of it. But yeah, I'm really going to focus on A Modest Proposal, mostly because it's kind of funny. All right, give me 1 second here. Okay, so A Modest Proposal. For preventing the children of poor people in Ireland from being a burden on their parents or country, and for making them beneficial to the public. So the first thing that always get students with this one is this is a satire. So if you do get what he's talking about, please know it's not actually what he means. And he kind of explains it near the end, but it's really interesting. It's a little long. I am going to read the whole thing and stop and talk about it. Okay, so it is a melancholy object to those who walk through this great town or travel in the city when they see the streets, the roads, and cabin doors crowded with beggars of the female sex, followed by 3, 4, or 6 children, all in rags, and importuning every passenger for an alms. These mothers, instead of being able to work for their honest livelihood, are forced to employ all their time in strolling to beg sustenance for their helpless infants, who, as they grow up, either turn thieves for want of work, or leave their dear native country to fight for the pretender in Spain, or sell themselves to the Barbados. So they're talking specifically about Dublin, as far as the city goes. It's kind of, like it says at the beginning, this is an Irish issue. This kind of goes around just a period of time where, there's not like a lot of wealth, and people are struggling. There's a lot of poverty in Ireland at the time. I think it is agreed by all parties that this prodigious big number of children in the arms or on the backs or at the heels of their mothers, and frequently of their fathers, is in the present deplorable state of the kingdom a very great additional grievance, and therefore whoever could find out a fair, cheap, and easy method of making these children sound and useful members of the Commonwealth would deserve so well of the public as to have a statue set up for a preserver of the nation. So basically, a summary of this is that there's a whole lot of kids and a whole lot of poor people, and how can we make these children a useful part of society instead of just hungry mouths? But my intention is very far from being confined to provide only for the children of professed beggars. It is of a much greater extent, and shall take in the whole number of infants at a certain age, who are born of parents in effect as little able to support them, as those who demand our charity in the streets. As to my own part, having turned my thoughts for many years upon this important subject, and maturely weighed the several schemes of our projectors, I have always found them grossly mistaken in their computation. It is true, a child just dropped from its dam may be supported by her milk for a solar year with little other nourishment, at most not above the value of 2 shillings, which the mother may certainly get, or the value in scraps, by her lawful occupation of begging. And it is exactly at 1 year old that I propose to provide for them in such a manner as, instead of being a charge upon their parents, or the parish, or wanting food and raiment for the rest of their lives, they shall, on the contrary, contribute to the feeding and partly to the clothing of many thousands. Okay, so what he is saying here, actually, I'm going to read the next little part, and then I'll go back. There is likewise another great advantage in my scheme, that it will prevent those voluntary abortions, and that horrid practice of women murdering their bastard children, alas, too frequent among us, sacrificing the poor innocent babes, I doubt, more to avoid the expense and the shame, which would move tears and pity in the most savage and inhuman breast. Okay, so basically what he's saying is that when kids turn 1, mom should be able to sell them so that other people can eat them, and also use their skin to make clothing. Again, this is satire. He's not being serious. He is highlighting some of how ridiculous some of the other things are that people have brought up. It comes to that later on, but I just want to be very clear where we're at with that right now. He is not actually saying people should eat babies, but he is saying that it's that is just as good of an option, and it will help not only with population but the hungry and clothing people. The number of souls in this kingdom being usually reckoned 1.5 million, of these I calculate there may be about 200,000 couples whose wives are breeders, from which number I subtract 30,000 couple who are able to maintain their own children, although I apprehend there cannot be so many under the present distress of the kingdom. But this being granted, there will remain 170,000 breeders. I again subtract 50,000 for women who miscarry or whose children die by accident or disease within the year. There only remain 120,000 children of poor parents annually born. The question therefore is, how this number shall be reared and provided for, which, as I have already said, under the present situation of affairs, is utterly impossible by the methods hitherto proposed. For we can neither employ them in handicraft or agriculture. We neither build houses, I mean in the country, nor cultivate land. They can very seldom pick up a livelihood by stealing till they arrive at 6 years old, except for when they are of a towardly parts. Although I confess they learn the rudiments much earlier, during which time they can, however, be properly looked upon only as probationers. As I have been informed by a principal gentleman in the country of Cavan, who protested to me that he never knew above 1 or 2 instances under the age of 6, even in a part of the kingdom so renowned for the quickest proficiency in that art. Basically, there's no way to make children under like 6 any sort of useful part of society, because they usually need to be about 6 to be good pickpockets, which probably has something to do with height. And then he kind of goes on to explain like how as children get to a certain age, they're not, you can't really do anything with them. Then they're like too close to adulthood. So he says that a young, healthy child, well nursed, is at a year old a most delicious, nourishing, and wholesome food, whether stewed, roasted, baked, or broiled, and I make no doubt that it will equally serve in a fricassee or a ragout. So he's just saying, like, I've heard that this is like a thing. Children are delicious when they're about 1 year old. I do therefore humbly offer it to public consideration that of the 120,000 children already computed, 20,000 may be reserved for breed, whereof only 1/4 part to be males, which is more than we allow to sheep, black cattle, or swine, and my reason is that these children are seldom the fruits of marriage, a circumstance not much regarded by our savages, therefore 1 male will be sufficient to serve 4 females. That the remaining 100,000 may, at a year old, be offered in sale to the persons of quality and fortune through the kingdom, always advising the mother to let them suck plentifully in the last month, so as to render them plump and fat for a good table. A child will make 2 dishes at an entertainment for a friend, and when the family dines alone, the fore or hind quarter will make a reasonable dish, and seasoned with a little pepper or salt, will be very good boiled on the 4th day, especially in winter. Okay. He just sort of continues to go on in describing eating children. Okay. And then he kind of goes into, he starts listing off reasons. Now, let me grab my other notes real fast. Here we go. Okay. So he starts listing like all of the advantages for like why this is a good idea to eat children. So again, satire. He starts talking about like how it's going to reduce the number of Protestants and Irish Catholic, the whole thing. So he lists out 6 different reasons why this is a really good idea. Then he says that, then he like kind of comes back at it and actually gives like real reasons why. So it kind of starts here. So I can think of no one objection that will possibly be raised against eating children, unless it should be urged that the number of people, will thereby be much lessened in the kingdom. And he says, like, I know this this is why I offered this idea to reduce the population. Um, and so he's just recognizing that. And then he says, therefore, let no man talk to me about their expedience of taxing our appentees at 5 shillings a pound. So here, right here, all of this, where he's using the rhetorical device of repetition by starting all of these sentences or these phrases with of, he is listing all of the actual things that would help Ireland. And then he just kind of goes on. But anyway, it's kind of a fun read for that reason. And then I was trying to look up something really specific in this and I couldn't figure it out. But basically, it's just kind of like women need to like obey men is what I gathered from it. I honestly, I couldn't find a whole lot to help with this one, but give it a read. Honestly, like the test question, I couldn't even find the line in the poem. But that covers, sorry, I'm trying to get this closed. So that covers everything for the Neoclassicism 2 tutorial. Like I said, I've got a study guide for you. It's already loaded up on Google Classroom. So I've just given you some things that you want to go through the tutorial and look for. You have your own version of it, so you can edit it and use it when you're taking your test. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions before you take the test, or if you don't pass and you have some questions. But that's all that I have for class today. So hopefully you found this helpful, and hopefully you enjoyed quarter 1 of English 12A. Au revoir.